70% of screen jobs at the moment, you're doing a self-tape or a Zoom audition. That hasn't really changed since COVID. You get the occasional face-to-face casting, but that's normally for like commercials and stuff. I mean, the preparation for a self-tape is still hard, especially when, you know, everybody's living situation is different, and so everybody's filming space is different. And casting directors are quite particular on how they like your space to look. Now, I think because the standard of self-tapes is so high, and the difference between casting directors getting people in the room and self-tapes is that they can watch twice as many self-tapes as they can compared to seeing somebody like come in the room, right? So the competition's a little bit more. So you have to make sure it's beautifully lit. You have to make sure your phone's on a tripod. You have to make sure your background is clear where possible.
Hello and welcome to the Blue Moggy Podcast. My name is Rachel Stevens. I am a writer, director, producer and all-around filmmaker, and on this show I talk to people working in film and media about the work that they do, how they got into their career, and share some tips and advice to you guys listening. On this episode, I was so happy to finally sit down and chat with Abbie Hills, who is a talent agent. Abbie and I have been trying to organise this chat for a while, and it finally happened. Abbie, as well as being a talent agent, set up her own talent agency, so we talked about the how and why she set that up. We also talked about her role as an access coordinator and her other work that she does within film and TV. Just before we get to that chat though, I just wanted to mention the next episode of the podcast, which will be with Alice Scott Hawkins. Alice is an artist. She's worked as an animator, especially animated documentary, and also in visual art, and now works to support artists. So we talked about her start in film and animation and how that has sort of developed into what she does now, supporting artists with their work. So make sure you're following and subscribing to the Blue Moggy Podcast so you can hear that chat. For the time being, the podcast doesn't have a regular release schedule, but it's something working on behind the scenes. So hopefully in the next couple of months, when sort of shift patterns and routines change for me, then we can stick to a more release schedule, hopefully get back to 2 episodes a month. But the episodes are still going to be coming out just sort of here and there a bit for the time being. If you are enjoying these episodes, please share them with people you think would be interested to hear from all these different people working within film and media. I'm trying to get a huge range of different people, so if there's anyone in particular that you want to hear from, say you want to hear from someone working in special effects or documentaries or video games or whatever it is, please do get in touch with the Blue Moggy Podcast so I can try and factor those in when I'm planning the guests. But that's enough for the moment. I think it's time now to get to my chat with Abbie Hills. I'm so excited to be welcoming Abbie Hills to the podcast. It's been a long time coming, but Abbie, you're finally here.
Hello, Rachel. Yes, finally. I'm so excited to be here. I'm glad we're doing this.
Yeah, I say finally because we've tried to do this a couple times now, and for a few reasons it didn't work out, but we're here now.
We are.
Yeah. How are you?
I'm good. I've been a little bit here, there and everywhere. It's nice to be back in Southampton for a little while, even if it is for a quick pit stop.
Yeah. So you're from New Forest area?
Yeah, from Hythe. Lovely, quiet little village. It makes a big change to London, where I was living earlier this year for a little while. And it's nice to be back just for a bit of slow.
Yeah.
Just for a break, do you know what I mean?
Yeah. We'll, so probably for the main part of this conversation, we'll be talking about your talent agency that you started. But before we get into that, if we sort of can start at the beginning, for kind of how you got into film. So you were acting from a young age, is that right?
Yeah, I think I was always a really stubborn kid, and I kind of had real clear direction of like, I want to work in film and TV. And I always knew that. And for me, that started off with acting, which is still a big love of mine, but at the time, from the age of like 12 to 16, I was doing screen acting classes, then moved into modelling for a little while, more specifically like hair modelling, like vintage hair and stuff, and then started making my own films at uni. kind of going back and forth between in front and behind the camera, like depending on what the project was. And then after that did a master's, and now here I am with a talent agency.
A master's in acting?
Master's in arts management.
Okay.
Which was good because it was, for me, like, I knew a lot about film because I'd kind of been on sets from quite a young age. And I was like, yeah, I love this, I know all about it, but I know nothing about business, right? And I feel like when you're a freelancer, even if you don't want to go and start a business, it's good to know how business runs because you are your own business at the end of the day. So I was like, yeah, I'm going to go do that, learn all the ins and outs of how to actually run something. And then I sort of, when I was doing that, I was like, oh, I could actually start a business while I'm here. That'd be a good idea. And that was over 5 years ago now. And now we have Abbie Hills.
Do you think that your kind of early interest was, I'm going to be acting because you maybe didn't know about other roles that you could do? You know you wanted to work in film and TV, but is it because that was like the most visible role of working in it? Or?
Yeah, I think so. And I think I think every kid loves performing, right? Or most kids love performing. So I think for me that was something that was always kind of there. And obviously, I have cerebral palsy, so I was very aware from a young age that I might not physically be able to meet the standards of like other roles in production. Like, I don't know, not that I'd ever be a grip and want to build camera equipment, but like that role, for example, or like operating tech itself, it was never on my radar because I felt like I couldn't do it. And I just loved being on camera at that age. Absolutely loved it.
Yeah, for me it was, I never actually thought about being a director. I think it was just because I didn't know, like you don't see directors. Like my image of a director was like a middle-aged man with a baseball cap in America. And it genuinely wasn't until I started working at City Eye and I was meeting filmmakers and I was like, oh, filmmakers can look like anyone and they can look like me. So I think I also at an early age focused on acting because I wasn't aware of all the different roles.
Well, yeah, because when you're in school, let's say the creative subjects on offer was drama, isn't it? That's it.
Yeah.
And 9 times out of 10 that's going to be for stage, right, rather than screen. That's something that I found confusing because during school and college I was learning about stage acting, and then after school and college I was learning about screen acting, and the two in my mind then, I mean, they are very different, but to me they were polar opposites, so I was getting a bit confused with kind of which path I wanted to take. And it was only from learning about screen acting outside of school that I was like, wait, there's somebody there who's directing this, there's somebody there holding a camera, there's somebody there holding a boom. Oh my God, these are all jobs.
Yeah.
So you just don't know unless you're exposed to it.
Yeah. So how did the sort of transition into becoming a talent agent, how did that start for you?
Working alongside some really talented people, both when I was on camera and when I was off camera, kind of directing them or producing a short. And all of these people that I was kind of meeting along this journey, none of them had any talent management. And from a lot of them that I had spoken to at the time, finding an agent felt quite unachievable because they weren't from London, or they didn't go to drama school, or they weren't, they didn't have enough cash to just drop everything, move to London and try and go to as many open castings as possible. And for me, that there was a really obvious gap there. And I kind of thought, well, I've been around a little bit. I kind of know how the industry works. Let's do something about that, and let's make a talent agency in Hampshire because we need one. I mean, as you know, through City Eye, we've got so many amazing creative people in this city and in this space, and even in Hampshire and beyond, actually. But Hampshire was my main focus when I started the agency because I was like, these people need to be seen and they need a platform, and I want to do that. So I'm really stubborn. Once I get an idea in my head, that was the main reason why I started Abbie Hills.
And so Abbie Hills started 2019, is that right? Mm-hmm. And I've seen on your website you've got quite a lot of clients. So how did that progress quite quickly, or?
Yeah, I mean, so here's how it kind of went. I started my master's in September of 2018. And that was when the cogs kind of started turning for me of like, okay, I'm going to learn about management and business and how to become a manager. What can I do with that? And then that became my focus very quickly of, okay, I want to start a talent agency. I think at the time I was working at, Laura Ashley. So in the December I quit. I was like, right, I've got no plan, but I can't be working and not be focusing on what I want to do now, which is a very risky move. But I did it. And then by that January 2019, where my company was established, that's when I did the whole company's house thing and started thinking about my marketing and my branding. And then I didn't openly advertise for any clients until probably about May. just because I really wanted to lock everything in and be really serious about what I'm doing. And my first challenge was like, I need a website, and I don't have like $2,000 to pay someone to build a website for me. So I had to figure that out and build a website by myself, and like domain names and emails and all of this stuff, which was totally new to me. Even like business cards, like all of this stuff that I really wanted to have implemented, because I was like, if I'm going to do this, I need to be giving it 100% and be serious. Because I think the thing is with talent management is when you're an agent, it's all reputation.
Yeah.
So you have to get people to trust you. And I think you need an authentic brand in order to do that. Like I'd had the connections already, but how was I going to, amplify that? So in the May 2019, I hired a venue. I hired the downstairs of the Grand Cafe. I can't remember what it's called now, but at the time it was Club 4.
Dotgate 4?
Yeah, kind of around there. And I gathered all my friends. Like I had a photographer friend, I had a couple of friends who helped me with admin. I was like, right, let's all rally up, let's do an open casting day. And I had about 50 people come to that, and I like advertised it on Facebook and stuff. And I was quite impressed with that turnout, considering nobody knew anything about my business or, what was happening. So from that, I signed a handful of clients, 5 or 6 clients, and then I kind of slowly built it up to about 20, 25. I wanted to keep it really low key. Like the kind of message behind my agency is diversity, but also support and having a real like close relationship with my clients. So I wasn't interested at all in going, right, I've opened my books, let's sign 400 people, I'll never speak to any of them, and I'll get them work as and when. I did not want to do that at all. That wasn't my message. So I kept it on the low and slow for a while, and then now, was it 4 years later? Timelines. I think 4. It's 4 years. Yeah, thank you. I'm glad you know. I've got 56 clients, and I opened my books again about a week ago now to bring in a few more faces, maybe like 10 more clients. Still keeping that boutique kind of close relationship feel, but just expanding ever so slightly.
So, as a talent agent, what's the main benefit for a talent actor coming to you? What do they get out of being part of an agency?
I think it totally depends where they are in their career. If it's somebody who's totally new, then there's that mentorship element, like, okay, here's what you need to do, this is what your headshot needs to look like, this is what your show reel needs to look like, this is how you get a show reel, because if you are really new, chances are you don't have one. For somebody more established, perhaps they've got work on their own for a while, but they want to kind of level up in the kind of caliber of work that they're getting. Maybe they just want support, maybe they're bored of doing the paperwork. It could be anything really. So for me, it totally depends where the client is on their journey as to what support I can offer them and the support that they want.
And so what's like a sort of standard day in the life of a talent agent for you?
Oh, wow. It's a lot of emails, a lot of WhatsApps, and a lot of phone calls. So, I mean, what I'll do is I'll kind of start my day by checking in with any clients who have maybe like messaged me overnight or messaged me that morning or have any questions. If I've got any self-tapes from clients that need to be submitted, I will cut those together, submit those.
Oh, so you edit those?
Yeah, it kind of depends on the client. I'm more than happy to. Some clients like to do it themselves and they've got the facilities to do it themselves. Some don't have the software. Some just don't know what they're doing. Some are just too busy. So I have no problem with doing it at all. So yeah, if there are tapes, I will cut them together if needed. If not, they'll be sent to me and then I'll submit them. So get all that sort of sorted, and then kind of go through all of the platforms that I use to find castings. I'll submit all my clients for it. This can take hours, this can take days. It just depends what it's about. And then sort of after that, I've never really thought about my routine before, so this is really interesting. Then I will speak to any casting directors that have contacted me. Maybe if it's a kind of off-platform job opportunity that they want to come to us for, have you got anyone who matches this brief? Then I will do that and have those conversations. And then it's kind of like rinse and repeat, really. I mean, my main priority is checking in with my clients, but also getting them booked on jobs, right? So
yeah.
that is the job for me. That's what I do.
Do you get involved with the sort of details of the contract, or once they book it, is that over to them? Yeah, no, that's totally me. All the paperwork stuff, all the contracts come to me. It's just kind of standard practice, really. I mean, generally what will happen is I'll apply for a casting on behalf of my client,
And then the casting director will come back to me and be like, we want to see this client. And then I will speak to my client and be like, oh, hey, guess what? I've got this casting for you, got this audition, whether it's face-to-face, Zoom, self-tape, whatever. Then they will put the material together or go and do the audition. And then I will send the material back to casting. And then if casting like them, they'll come back to me. And then it's such a long-winded process. And then let's say it's a commercial. We really like your client, but we're shortlisting, so your client's going to be recalled. So then I'll go back to my client and be like, you've got a recall. And they'll be like, okay, great, where's the recall? Then I go back to casting, and it's like this, that, forward and back until
so you're
the booking.
your middleman.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And then, once they are accepted onto the job or they've been chosen for the job, I'll get all the paperwork, talk them through it, make sure they know where they're going, what they're doing, where they're staying, what they're wearing, everything like that. And then they'll go on the job, have a wonderful time, come back, and then I'll do all the paperwork afterwards. And that's, it's a lot of admin.
Yeah. We were talking just now about the benefits of having an agent. A few episodes ago, I spoke to Sally Waite, who's an illustrator and an artist, who's just been signed by an illustration agency. And she was saying, it was fairly new, so she wasn't completely sure how different it would be for her. But just having all of that admin side of stuff taking off of her plate so she can focus on making the art was like...
Exactly. I think that's what it is. It's taking the onus off the performer so they can focus on their craft, because that's the thing they need to be perfecting, right? That's the thing they need to be doing every day. They don't need to worry about contracts and call sheets and stuff until the last minute, and that's on a need to know basis. I just want my guys to be able to focus on what they do best, which is the performing, and then I'll do all the rest of it. I'll be the one on the phone.
Do you still encourage actors to be looking for their own work as well, or are you kind of leave that to me? If they're like, oh, I saw this thing pop up on Facebook, what do you think?
For me, it kind of depends on the caliber of the job. Let's say I've got a fairly new starter of a client and they're just wanting to get some showroom material and get some more practice, and perhaps they found a grad film or something, little 2 or 3 day short, local to them and things. In those instances, I'm happy for them to kind of self-submit. I mean, it's always preferable for me to be involved, because it means that I can keep an eye on the paperwork and make sure that, if in their paperwork it says, oh, you're going to get a final film at the end of shooting, and they don't get the film, then I can step in and kind of chase that. Whereas if they don't involve me, quite often, they don't feel that they've got the backing to do so. So kind of, I do encourage them to keep me involved at kind of all stages of applying for things. But for the smaller jobs, the local jobs, the one-dayers, I'm kind of fine for my clients to go ahead and do that. But for things that are a bit more substantial, like your features and your TV series, for me, for the interest of my clients and for reputation wise, I think it's better that comes through me, because if I don't know that my client is applying for a TV series and they email a casting director cold, and then I email the casting director to introduce my client to be like, oh, they'd be great for this show, that casting director has now had 2 emails from us. It makes us look like we're not in conversation with each other. Do you know what I mean? So I mean, this is why I'm speaking to my clients all the time, to understand what they want to do and the jobs they want to be targeting, so that I can take care of it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Cool.
No, so you're sort of protecting them in a way from, if they don't deliver on the contract.
Exactly. And I think when there's some fantastic self-represented actors out there, but I think we all kind of know in this industry that once you do get an agent, your profile is elevated somewhat. And so once you have that elevation, you want to kind of maintain a professional standard by working with your agent, rather than making it look like you're both detached from each other and you're applying for the same things.
On days like, you kind of did an open day and 50 people came, what were you asking of the people that turned up? Were they doing like monologues, or were they just describing themselves and then you asked them to do something? Yeah,
so actually, and looking back, I don't know why I would have done this. I think now I would do things slightly differently, but I actually didn't ask for any performance on the day itself. What happened was they'd come in, they'd register, they would supply their measurements or get their measurements done. They'd get a headshot done, which was a nice little perk that I threw in, because people wanted to come and get a free headshot, right? So I managed to bring in a few people that way.
Oh, so everyone got a headshot?
Yeah.
Regardless?
Because then regardless of whether we would go on a journey together. I feel like I did something to help support where their career was going next. So they'd have a headshot, then they'd come over and chat to me, tell me about what they've done, tell me where they're based, like what their experiences are, what their day job is if they have one. And then kind of from that moment, that brief 20-minute conversation, I would kind of have an inkling as to whether, I suppose, their attitude towards having an agent, I suppose, and the attitude towards their career. And then kind of after that, that's when I shortlisted. And then I requested material. And I was like, okay, send me a monologue. Because, yeah, I think, although now I would have liked to have watched some performances on the day, I also think the way that I was doing things and the type of venue and the fact that it was like, you know, someone would be having the measurements done, then headshots, then speaking to me, and it was kind of like a trail all day. I don't think it would have been the right environment to do that.
Right.
But yeah, it was nice to have that initial conversation. I think you can really see what people are about when you invite them to have a chat. And so much of being an agent is relationship based, that for me, if that initial kind of thing wasn't there, you know, they could be the best performer in the world, but if we don't have that kind of mutual understanding of wanting to work together, then that for me is not going to work.
Yeah. And so you say you've just opened your books at the moment. So what is that? Are you asking people for? Are you asking people to send you videos or?
Yeah, this is so exciting when this happens because I get to speak to so many amazing people. I was quite surprised this time because I didn't officially open my books on my website. I just put a tweet out and then retweeted it on Abbie Hills Twitter. I've had like 110 people apply in like the last 2 days, which is so much fun. I've got a lot of material to watch now. So generally I'll just say headshot, spotlight if you have it. If you don't have it, that's fine. That's not a deal breaker for me. I mean, it's good to have, but not a deal breaker. So if you don't have spotlight, then a link to something else. But most of the time, even if they send me a link with a show reel, I will still ask. I'll be like, oh, okay, you know, thank you for sharing. It was great. But I'll still ask them to send me a monologue. Because for me, it's very easy to copy and paste a link to an email. But if I'm asking somebody to record something new, I think it kind of just shows their kind of motivation and willing. Do you know what I mean? And it means that I can also see a fresh performance, because if somebody's sending me a show reel that's 4 years old, that's like no use to me whatsoever, because they could have trained since then, they could have completely changed their acting style, they could have changed what they look like, do you know, all of this stuff. So that's kind of what I do. I'll be like, send me this stuff. Regardless, I'm going to ask you for more material anyway.
And so your clients, they're working on screen, they're working on
screen
stage?
And stage now, yeah, which was kind of a nice surprise to me. When I started Dazey Hills, my intention was just to be screen focused because it's the world that I come from and the world that I know. And then I started to represent some amazing like theatre grads and stage grads, and I was like, okay, I don't know a whole lot about the stage and theatre world other than like I'm a fan, but I don't know, you know, business wise, I'm still trying to figure that out. But I thought, okay, we'll give it a go. So client dependent, you know, I'll put them forward for the stuff they want to be put forward for. And we've had quite a lot of stage bookings actually since I started doing that, which is really cool for me because it's something that I'm still learning quite a lot about. I've got a client on quite a long sort of tour at the moment, or a long running show actually, just off West End. And I'm so excited about it. And I went to go and see her on opening night, and it was just such an amazing rush. And, you know, I love film, I love screen. But it was so much fun to be able to go and see my client in action, like, you know, in a live environment.
Yeah. So I guess in terms of finding them a job, it's similar to finding someone a screen job. It's just maybe the place you're looking for, the jobs not posted in the same place, or?
The platforms that I use are generally across the board, so I have stage, screen, voiceover, cruise ships, corporate, everything really. But it's just the audition process is different. I think like 70% of screen jobs at the moment, you're doing a self-tape or a Zoom audition. That hasn't really changed since COVID. You get the occasional face-to-face casting, but that's normally for like commercials and stuff, whereas for stage it will be quite a substantial audition where normally they'll go face to face, and maybe they'll have a movement call, and then they'll have to do a monologue, and then they'll have to sing a bit, and then they'll have to hang around, and then if they've made it to the callback stage, they'll go back later in the afternoon, they'll do it all over again. So it's a much more grueling process, I think, for the performer, compared to like a 20-minute Zoom call or a self-tape. I mean, the preparation for a self-tape is still hard. especially when, you know, everybody's living situation is different, and so everybody's filming space is different. And casting directors are quite particular on how they like your space to look. So that in itself is a challenge. Yeah.
What do they want? Just like plain
white? like a plain, like a grey background like this is, that's well lit. You know, and now I think because the standard of self-tapes is so high, and the difference between casting directors getting people in the room and self-tapes is that they can watch twice as many self-tapes as they can compared to seeing somebody like come in the room, right? So the competition's a little bit more. So you have to make sure it's beautifully lit. You have to make sure your phone's on a tripod. You have to make sure your background is clear where possible. Or you get the other side of it. I had a client do a tape the other day, and he basically had to make a short film because of what they required. And he did really, really well, to be honest. But he had to like have somebody filming him outside, like walking down a street, like in a car.
And that was part of the requirements. So they were like, wow.
He smashed it. But it was a really tough tape. We were both like, oh no, how are we going to do this?
Yeah. That must be tough, because obviously, like, if you're working, you want to try and find, you know, what's going to be your next job. So you don't necessarily have the time to make a whole short film to
exactly
to
and then, you know, if you need somebody to be a reader for you, or if you need somebody to film it for you, because if you need a shot of you walking, there's no way you can just like do it in selfie mode. It will just look hideous. So you have to really, really think about what you're doing, which is really tough.
So with self-tapes, I guess that's also quite hard if you're literally just using your webcam or your phone. You're not acting off of anyone.
Yeah, this is why, where possible, I encourage my clients to get a reader. But sometimes you're getting a casting in at like 5 o'clock on Tuesday, and it's got to be in at 9 a.m. on Wednesday. And let's say your partner, friend, housemate, whatever's out the house. Your actor mates aren't around and you can't get a reader, then, you know, you have to make it work. Some people like to like read the lines into a software and then have it play back to them. But then, I mean, I've never done it, so I don't know. But I can imagine that being quite jarring, like, because you're almost talking to yourself, but they're two different characters. So yeah, I think it's amazing really how they pull it out the bag, because sometimes you are given like less than 24 hours and you have to get it in, because if you don't get it in, you're not going to be seen. If you're not getting seen, you're not going to get the job, right? So
do you have any tips for anyone filming self-tapes other than if a reader, if possible?
Make sure the lighting's good. I think that is the main thing, because, you know, when you're going into a physical casting, chances are you're going to be going into a really bright, well-lit room. And so when you're being filmed in that environment, the casting team can see what you would look like on camera. Now, if you're at home in your flat or your house with your phone and you're doing front camera and low lighting, I just don't think you're going to be doing yourself any favours. So from what I've heard is using your back camera is better. More annoying to set up and everything, but it's better. And even just getting like a ring light really does go a long way, because it's just really glowy and just, I think, really lifts the frame of the shot. So that would be my recommendation. And also making sure sound is good. Like if you've got housemates, ask them really, really nicely to turn their music off for like however long you need, you know, half an hour or so, because even if it's really quiet, if somebody can just hear like, I don't know, bass in the background or something, it's quite distracting from your performance. So sound and lighting is probably my two tips there. You mentioned about the platforms you look for roles. Are they sort of like industry websites? Yeah, so the main one, which kind of anyone who's listening who's like an actor will know, that Spotlight is kind of where it's at in terms of casting. And people can make their own Spotlight profiles. You don't need to have an agent to do that. No, you don't need to have an agent, but there are some requirements that you do need to meet. Spotlight have changed it now. They used to make it really difficult. Like you must have 4 paid credits in TV or film, like principal roles or supporting roles rather than extra work, or you must have studied at a certain caliber of school in order to get approved. But now I think they've changed that. I think you have to have 2 credits now, and they've kind of softened the barriers a little bit on the kind of school that you needed to go to. So you can go on Spotlight as a self-represented performer, but you will only see a fraction of the castings that us agents do. And then, you know, when you get an agent, you open up to much more of the castings. Your agent will see them. You won't necessarily see them. Sometimes you will. It just entirely depends. But that is kind of the most industry-wide platform. It's been going for years, and it is kind of the go-to place now to get work.
And that's stage and screen work.
Stage, screen, voiceover, corporate, photographic stills, educational theatre, absolutely everything.
So if you signed a client who's like, I don't have Spotlight, I don't have an IMDb page, is that something you would set up for them, or just encourage them to set up?
Yeah, not so much to set it up for them. I mean, now Spotlight, if you're an agent and you've been an agent for a certain amount of time, you can recommend performers and you can kind of endorse them to be accepted. It doesn't always work, but it does sometimes. So if somebody came to me and didn't have Spotlight, it's not, like I said earlier, it's not a deal breaker for me at all. In fact, I think it's quite exciting because it's, you know, it's a really clear goal and target that we can have together as agent and performer. So I don't know, let's say they've got a couple of scenes in their show reel, they've got 2 or 3 credits, they just need that final one, that final push. Then in my head I'm like, okay, it's go time, let's get them that job so they can get on Spotlight. And then that's when the gates open then to even more work.
Do you find networking gets a lot of work, or is that more just about pushing the brand of the agency?
Depends who I'm networking with, really. I did my first, like, I say big networking event, but I did my first, well, it was a big networking event actually. It was called a networking extravaganza, and I was terrified. The thing is, I'm a big talker. I can talk all day long, like, you know, online to people and on the phone. Like, it doesn't scare me. But networking and being in the room, I still find very nerve-wracking. So I went to this networking extravaganza with the National Diversity Awards that was completely diversity focused. And so for me, I felt in my element, you know, being a woman with a disability and running a diverse-led talent agency. I was like, yeah, I can do this. And, you know, in that situation, although I was scared, I was talking the socks off my agency. And, you know, I might not have been in a room full of filmmakers and industry people. But for me, like you said, it's about spreading the brand, because you never know, like, I spoke to somebody who said, oh, you know, I'm not a performer, but my daughter is looking for rep and she'd love to speak to you. So for me, I think it's really valuable making connections any way you can. And it's something that I'm trying to get less scared of.
Yeah. Networking is a bit of one of those sort of necessary things in the industry, but I don't think many people enjoy doing it.
Oh, it's really hard to do. We did this really interesting exercise actually where... So Vanessa Valley, she kind of said, right, we're going to run through some networking here now. And like everyone in the room just froze. And we were like, oh, God, I don't know about that. She said, I'm going to give you 7 minutes to walk up to someone random in the room and start talking to them. And like, I know it sounds really simple, go up to someone and start talking, but it was terrifying. And we were all so out of our comfort zone. But we would do the 7 minutes. Time would go off. We'd go off and do it with another person for 7 minutes and another person. I think we did it 3 times. And then by the end of it, when we were all having lunch together, everyone was just like circulating and networking and talking. And it was really powerful just to get out of that scared zone that we were all in. So I think it helped. I learned a lot from it, but we'll see at the next event.
I'm one of those people that if I'm at a networking event and I see someone I know, I'm immediately going to them and then probably spending a bit too long talking to them.
It happens. Like, I met a wonderful person. You know, we're up in Manchester, and what are the odds that I meet somebody from Southsea?
Yeah.
I was like, a local friend. Here we go. I'm going to latch onto you for a little while. So we had some really, really good conversations. And then when this networking 7-minute thing came about, Vanessa, who was leading it, was like, right, if I see you with your friend, I'm going to split you up. So we all had to like stray away from it and go and meet some new people. But it was really good to have that push.
Yeah.
And now I think it's about me knowing that when I go to an event, I have to have that internal push to actually go and do it. Because like I said, virtually, I've got no problem. It doesn't scare me at all. But face to face, it's just a whole different ball game, isn't it?
I went to... I think it was a rain dance network thing with my friend Ben, who was the first guest of this podcast. And we were both just stood next to each other a bit scared. And then we were like, okay, let's make a pact to go talk to 2 people each before we talk to each other again. And
that's so good, like to set goals, even if it is just 1 or 2 people.
Yeah.
And I find that when you go to an event with somebody you know, it can be quite good as long as you get out of that bubble of like, we're just going to be together. Like if you go and speak to people together, you can bounce off each other and be like, oh, have you met so-and-so? They do this. And they're like, oh yeah, have you met so-and-so? They do this. And then you can kind of go through it that way. I didn't know it was such an art, networking. There's a lot to it.
Yeah,
there's a lot to it.
It's changing subject slightly. You've mentioned obviously being disabled with cerebral palsy, and you've had work as a access coordinator in TV. Did you want to explain a bit about what that role is and how that came about?
I would love to talk about being an access coordinator. This is quite new for me. So last summer, I was selected to be one of the first 12 people in the country to be trained as an access coordinator. Every one of those 12 people has lived experience in some ways, which is kind of a really important and special part of the training. So let me explain what an access coordinator is. That'd be helpful, wouldn't it?
It sounds like this is like a new role.
So essentially, an access coordinator is an advisor that's hired by production to kind of facilitate the needs of deaf, disabled, neurodivergent people, both in front and behind the camera. That's essentially what it is. And it just means that the individual has everything they need and has their access requirements met, and the onus is kind of taken away from production a little bit so that nothing gets missed, so that there is a role to support access entirely, so that it's not an afterthought, or it's not like, oh, last minute, we're on set, we don't have a ramp. Now we have to spend hundreds on a ramp because we didn't think about it. Things like this. This is what an access coordinator is here for. So I did the training. We did a couple of sessions face-to-face and a couple of sessions virtually. And then in September, early October actually, I was the first one of those 12 which are going to be placed on a production. This was my first job in TV. I come from a film background mainly. So my first job in TV on an unscripted production where there were both people, on and off screen talent that needed my support. And it was kind of like, okay, you've done your training now, off you go. It was a really challenging experience, but it was so wonderful, and I really felt like I was starting to make positive action for people in TV and film that had, perhaps not had the support that was needed before. That is something that the kind of access coordinators as a whole are trying to push now. We're trying to make sure that productions know that, firstly, that we exist, secondly, that you can hire us, and thirdly, that it's going to make your production run so much more smoothly, and it's probably going to save you money as well. And it's going to make sure that people are cared for, and that the welfare of your team is a focus. Because it's not always, it can be very last minute, and there's a lot going on in production all the time. But if you've got an intimacy coordinator and you've got production manager, you've got location manager, and you've got all these people in these different departments, you can absolutely allocate some of your budget to have an access coordinator as well. Because mostly, productions won't know unless the individual chooses to disclose. The productions won't know that they have people on their team with additional needs. So by bringing in an access coordinator, you're not saying, oh, you have to disclose, but you're kind of bridging the gap a little bit and making people aware that if they want to disclose, there is an individual there to support them throughout the job. And I think that's really special. And I would have loved that on some of the previous jobs that I had. So I'm really trying to push for this now and do more jobs and support more people, really.
Yeah, I think that's great, because I think we all know now there's obviously there's obvious visible disabilities that people have, but there's so many that you're not aware of just by talking to someone or looking at them. So for the people on that production, knowing that they've got this person they can go to and be like, actually, I need whatever it is, I need more places to sit down, or I need to do shorter takes, or whatever it is.
I know that you've worked on films and stuff as well, Rachel. They are the most sensory environment. They are so loud. There's so much going on. There's so many people. There's so many lights. And it can be very draining to anyone, let alone when you're neurodivergent or you have additional needs. It can be really, really challenging. And people don't always understand that, because let's say you've got a location manager that he's been in the business 30 years. It's a walk in the park for him. He's always done it. But you may have a trainee on set who has additional needs that feels they can't speak out because of the stigma against speaking out and feeling like you might lose your job, but also really struggling day to day. And that's then going to have an impact on their work, or it's going to have an impact on the aftermath of their work, and they're going to think, oh, I don't know, can I do this career? Is it long term? Is this going to burn me out and stress me out? And even if a brief chat with an access coordinator can kind of soften that a little bit and help them have an understanding that yes, this job is accessible for them, then I think access coordinators are absolutely doing what they should be.
Yeah. So we know of at least 12 people doing this role. Do you think that that's going to take off and it'll be a bigger part of...
They're actually opening up the application for the next cohort of trainees now.
Yeah.
So I can absolutely give you information on that as well, because they're looking for people to be the next lot of access coordinators, because 12 people in the country
not enough.
It's not enough. I mean, not all productions are kind of taking advantage of it at the moment and booking it, but ideally we want to be working on scripted shows, unscripted shows, feature films, live TV, and then it goes further than that, doesn't it? Because you think, okay, there's a screen industry and the stage industry, but then there's also the music industry. And then the more you think about it, like every industry could benefit from an access coordinator. And I was having a really interesting chat with somebody who works sort of in hospitality and for hotels, and she heard in my speech that I gave at the networking event about being an access coordinator, and we had a really interesting chat after where she said, when we build our properties, we always think about access for the guests, but we're not really thinking about access for the staff. And I thought that was really interesting, because if your workforce aren't catered for and being looked after, then that could be really, really difficult. So we had such an interesting chat about that, and then that made me kind of realise that it is, at the moment, we are screen and entertainment industry focused with this access coordinator thing, but it's much more widespread than that, I think.
Yeah. And so who is it that's doing those training? Is there an organisation that's leading on that? So
this next cohort, I believe, is with Screen Skills.
Okay.
Screen Skills and Triple C, or DANK, as they're also called. They're called Triple C and DANK. So yeah, I can give you the information about that and then share it about. Cause it's so exciting, and it was such an eye-opening experience for me to not only do the training, but then do the job. And I think for me, as somebody with a disability who's worked in film and TV, to then be working with other people with disabilities and additional needs in film and TV made me feel really, really good, and like I'm actually with people that get it.
Yeah.
Do you know?
And I'm guessing it was people with a variance in their disabilities.
Yeah. On this job I was on in last year, I met loads of other people with cerebral palsy, and I haven't met that many people with cerebral palsy face to face. I've got lots of friends online, and we speak and we blog together and stuff, but actually face to face meeting other people with the same condition as me, that was like mind blowing. I'm 27. It's taken for me to be 27 to meet other people like me, which is absolutely wild. And so while my role is there to kind of support and facilitate the needs of others, I think for me as well, it's makes me feel like proud to be in such an inclusive space and meet other people who are like me, or meet other people who have similar experiences to me, and vice versa.
I was looking at your sort of bio to see that you have a production company as well. Is that a big part of your day-to-day, or is talent agency kind of like your main, or I should say, is Abbie Hills your kind of main job?
Yeah, so when I started Abbie Hills, it was very much talent agency and production company.
Okay.
I wanted the two to run in tandem, because I was like, aside from all the problems that come with the old Hollywood studio system, I was like, oh, this is amazing. They make films in-house and they cast in-house and they churn it out in-house. It's amazing. And then they can make more stuff. So that was kind of my thoughts with that. We did quite a few shorts. I hired out production crew to go work on various other shorts back when I had a kind of client base of creative freelancers. And then we were working towards our first feature, and then COVID hit. And I was like, oh, I've run my business a year and now COVID's hit. Is this like the end of it? What am I going to do? And like the whole industry, as you know, unless you're working on like multi-million-pound budget stuff, and even that stopped for a while, but everything stopped. And I was like, luckily I had no overheads. Like, I don't rent an office, I didn't have any kind of major outgoings at the time. But, a lot of my production crew went back to their hometowns or left the industry or had to get another job, just in order to like survive COVID, which I totally understand. And then pulling the plug on my feature was really, really tough. And then sort of after COVID settled, I was kind of channeling all my efforts into getting my acting clients work again, because my production base of clients had kind of, sadly naturally fizzled out at that point. My focus was like, right, get the Abbie Hills branding for the talent agency side, you know, really, really out there. Let's get these clients some amazing jobs. Let's reconnect with casting directors. The industry is awake. Let's go. Otherwise, I'm going to miss the boat. And so the production company side is still there, but it's more me now, where I will go and like exec on a short film, or I'll do some mentoring for if it's like new filmmakers, like, oh, here's how you apply for funding, or I know this person who can help you with locations, or so it's kind of me independently advising and producing, but still under the umbrella of my production company. And I've still got scripts that we're kind of churning out, and I've still got productions that I'm going to work on. And, you know, I will, if somebody's like, oh, do you know a sound guy, or do you know somebody who does set deck, like I will still kind of use my contacts to help them find those people, but it's kind of away from my actual production company itself.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. So it's still there, it's still very much there, but it's more just on a project by project basis now, rather than me actually, you know, representing crew.
And so that feature film, that's still not happened. Is that still something that's hopefully one day?
Yeah. We've still got the cash that we raised for it, and the script is, you know, ready to go. Everything was ready to go. Like we had accommodation, we had where we were filming, we even had like our CAD numbers from the police to use the guns that we had in the film. Like everything was locked down. But I kind of had to make a decision, because we were going to run this on a very, very small amount of money that we raised. In my head, I thought, okay, like quite a substantial proportion of this money we have is going to go on accommodation for my crew and stuff, right, that are coming from far away. So if I book this accommodation and 2 nights later everything has to stop because of a COVID lockdown, I've lost half my budget, my crew is stuck, and we can't film. So I just had to make that call, and I just had to pull on it. And I'm actually really glad that I did that, because although this was like 2 years ago now, my film's still not made. I think I would have been doing myself, the cast and the crew, a disservice to try and rush through and muddle through with just trying to churn something out, because we were nearly there with it. I was like, I need to pull back, take a step back, you know, money aside, script aside, this needs to happen when we're ready. Because for me as well, like, you know, I've got cerebral palsy, I've got a low immune system. COVID was bad enough. I didn't want to be like any more at risk. I didn't want to make anyone else poorly. So yeah, it's still very much bubbling away in the background. And I've just got back from Cannes, where I didn't do any major pitching, but I did some soft pitching to some individuals and had some really good conversations about the project, which has kind of reignited it now, and it's kind of more in the forefront of my mind to get things moving again. Yeah.
Well, hopefully. Hopefully, and then you can come back and talk about that feature film.
Absolutely. I'm so excited about it. And it was just one of those things. I was like, okay, producer challenge, what are we going to do here?
Yeah. Is there any sort of next steps for the Abbie Hills company that you're kind of like reaching a certain amount of clients, or taking on more staff, or anything like that? Is there any goals that you're working towards?
And it's really nice, because in the last couple of weeks I've been able to think about this, because this whole year I've been so on the go. So the first 5 months of the year I was working on a TV show in London, and then I moved back from London, then I went to Cannes, then I went to several other places, and now I'm back. So I've actually got a minute to go, okay, what's the game plan here? So as I said kind of at the start of this, my books are open. I'm taking on some more clients, but I'm not interested in like doubling my client base. My existing clients are very much my focus, and then a few more kind of fresh faces to just kind of add to that. And then it's always reputation building and brand building, really. Like, you know, there's always new people to meet, there's always new projects to put people forward for, and there's always work that, you know, I can be doing as an agent to just elevate the brand and the reputation of what I'm doing. Personally, I really want to shoot something this summer. I feel like the projects that I've been working on have been great, like these TV shows and when I was working on indie and stuff, but I haven't had a chance to have a real creative outlet. So now that I'm back, I want to reconnect with my filmmaker friends, you know, get our heads together and actually shoot something this summer. Doesn't matter if it's a micro short, you know, it doesn't matter if it's a pilot. I just really want to get creative and bring as many of my clients into that as possible. And then, down the line, definitely going to need an assistant, because there's a lot going on at the moment. But I would also really like to kind of, well, like we're doing now, really, just talk to more people about the industry, particularly, I don't know, school leavers, people in their first and second year of uni, just to give an understanding as to how big the industry is and the different opportunities that come with it, because like we said at the start of this conversation, people just don't know. They're like, oh, you can be an actor, you can go on stage, or you can go on camera, that's it. So that's something I'd really like to push is the kind of like educating behind what's going on in the industry, because I'm very fortunate that I was doing it from, you know, quite a young age, and now having a business that's nearly 5 years old, I'm really ready to like give back and have these conversations with people, because I think it's really valuable.
I mean, well, obviously, I think it's totally valuable. That's kind of why this podcast exists. But yeah, if you just like even like look at the credits at the end of a film, and like how many different roles there are so many things people can do in film and TV, and it's so nice to try and get as many different people talking on this podcast about how they got into it as possible. Do you have any advice for anyone who wants to be a talent agent, how they would go about starting? Because obviously, like you say, you have a reputation. How do you build that?
How do you build that? You just kind of need to be seen, and you need to kind of get about your local circuit a little bit. Go to film festivals, go to showcases where actors are, go to university performances, even go to an amateur drama class yourself, because I can speak for myself that I do, I still love performing, and so you not only can you like exercise that kind of hobby that you have, but also you can meet so many amazing people. You just need to be present, I think, and obviously social media is a really big thing now as well, so kind of utilize your tools to be seen in the space that you want to work in. I think that's the thing that I kind of understood. You have to like find where you want to be and find a way to put yourself in there, because if you're not in there, people aren't going to see you, unfortunately. And that's pretty much it.
What advice would you give to actors looking for representation?
The advice that I would give to actors looking for representation is, when you are actively writing emails to agents, be professional, and be personal as well. Like, I can see immediately if somebody has just like found 50 agents' emails and just copied and pasted the same email over and over again to every agent. I can see that a mile off. You think I can't, but I can. So I think the thing is to make it a little bit personal. I mean, you don't have to know my life story, but at least know my name. The amount of times I get called Dazey is absolutely... I get called Dazey more than I get called Abbie. And like, I do get it because of the name of my brand and that my surname is Hills and stuff, and it's an easy mistake to make. And I think on Google, our email address is Dazey Hills. But, I'm very active on social media. If you find the Dazey Hills company, you found me. So, I think for me, just even that, it just goes to show you're invested, or you want to be invested in me personally as an agent, rather than just, I'm an actor, I need an agent, who's going to take this bait? Having said that though, access is really important to me, and I do understand that like emails can be quite difficult to do. So if you really struggle with that, or you haven't got somebody who can support you and kind of help you write it, we can absolutely have a phone conversation. We can have a Zoom call. I don't really mind in what format we begin the conversation, but I just want there to be an element of kind of professionalism and also interest in the branding of the agency, or any agency, not necessarily mine, but any agency that you're applying for. Just show that you've got interest in it. Why would you be a good fit to them? What do you like that one of the clients has done? What do you like about their website? What's the agent been up to on Twitter? I think that just really adds an element of humanity to it, rather than just like chasing to get an agent because you feel as though you need one.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? I babbled a bit there.
No, definitely. Yeah, no, it's not like just writing like a to whom it may concern email.
That's so, but you know how boring that is to read? Like, it's actually the most boring thing ever. And I want to know about you. I want to know, and if you're applying for representation, I know you're an actor. You're going to put your spotlight or your Mandy or your headshot. But like, spice it up a little bit. Add something interesting about you, because that's what I want to know. And if we're building a relationship and we're working together to get you work, then it needs to start with the right tone.
I was surprised earlier this year when I was looking for actors. It was last year actually. I was looking for actors, and I got people emailing me, and not one of them sent me a link.
Really?
To it. And I was like, what am I supposed to be basing this off? Your email?
This is what I mean. It just doesn't make sense. I mean, if you're meeting face to face, they give you a business card, right? So if they can't give you a business card via email, then they need to be giving you something. Some of the emails that I get, it's like, hi, I want to act. That's it. That's the email.
I want to act.
That is the email. And I'm like, okay, care to elaborate? What's your name? What are you sending me? You know, all of this stuff. Like,
do you want to know what sort of projects they're looking for? Or
yeah, I think that can be quite helpful. So, I mean,
do you get anyone who's like, I really want to be in horror, or do they just want to work mostly?
No, I think a lot of actors have really clear goals, which for me is really useful. The kind of template of how I like to bring a client on, or what I do when I'm signing a new client, is I get that initial email, I'll watch their stuff. As I said, 9 times out of 10, I'll be like, oh, you know, that was wonderful, but please can you send me a monologue? Just because I want to see if they're going to put the work in, right? And I also want to see a recent performance. Then I get the monologue, and if I love it, if I think it's great, I'll be like, oh, you know, thank you for sending me that. Let's have a Zoom call. And then in that first Zoom conversation, that's when I'll be like, okay, right, what are your special skills? Do you have a genre that you want to work towards? What are your goals? And so then I can really start to paint a picture of what I'm doing. And then our goals are kind of in sync then. And, we, you know, because we're working together, the goals need to be in sync. Otherwise, it's just not going to work. And then if I want any additional material from there, I'll request it. If not, if I'm happy with what I've seen and, you know, there's a good kind of relationship forming, and I think they'd be a good fit to Abbie Hills, I would then send a draft contract for them to have a read through. And then, all being well, they'll be happy with the draft, they'll sign it, they'll send it back along with a headshot, and then, yeah, we rock and roll from there, really.
Is there any other advice, not necessarily specific about finding a talent agent or anything, just something maybe you come across a lot that you'd like people to know?
I think kind of more entertainment focused this is, but I think a lot of people will have dreams and aspirations to work in entertainment and just feel so totally overwhelmed by like where to start, because it is, we've discussed this, it's a huge industry and it is really, really daunting, especially if you don't have like an immediate network or immediate support. So if you are at the very beginnings of being like, okay, I want to work in entertainment, firstly, refine what you want to do. And I'm quite confident in saying this because I've done a bit of everything. You don't have to know exactly what it is you want to do straight away, because like I've been an agent, or I am an agent, I've worked in costume, I've worked in set deck, I've been a runner, I've been a production assistant, I've been an actor, like I've done a load of stuff. So find a couple of things that you want to do and then think about kind of where you are geographically speaking, and then do research as to what is in your area. So like we're here, right? So we've got City Eye, we've got Mast, we've got all these amazing production companies that are churning out indies all the time. We've got 2 unis, both with creative courses on them. We've got colleges with creative courses on them. There's night courses, like, so that's where I would start. And then you can kind of think, okay, out of these organisations, who do I need to meet? And then you can do the terrifying networking thing and then it all goes from there. But I think, yeah, really start with your own area first, because that is where you can kind of start to build. You know, you can make connections. You're an actor, oh, you need a headshot, meet some photographers, because they might need somebody to practice headshots on. They might be a wildlife photographer and they might want to do headshots. Boom, there you go, you've got a headshot. Okay, headshot's done. How do we get a show reel? Oh, I'm meeting some film students, they want to make some shorts, or they want to practice, they want to churn out some material for a 40-hour film challenge. Oh cool, I'm an actor, I'll volunteer my time. Boom, good to go. And then all of a sudden it just starts to happen. So you just kind of need to think about where you can find these connections and just go for it, because, you know, I started in this industry when I was about 14, so it's like 13 years ago now, and I'm still, you know, I'm still learning and I'm still meeting people every day, and you have to start. It can't all just be in your head, because it will stay there and then you'll be miserable that you never went for it. Yeah, that's my advice.
Yeah.
That's my advice. Does that sound scary?
A little bit, but it's also something I've sort of heard in various ways quite a few times. Afina Mandis, who was on a few episodes ago, said there's a lot of luck in filmmaking, but you have to be there, ready to do it. You know?
You have to be present.
Yeah.
If you don't show up, someone else will, and that's the bottom line. And I've learned that the hard way. I've learned that because I've been too scared to go somewhere, or too scared to do something, or I said no to an opportunity that I didn't feel that I was right for. Yeah. Then you kick yourself. You're like, why did I do that? And it, you know, it's, especially in this industry, it's going to be a lot of no's, and you kind of have to be prepared for that. But in order to get all these no's and all these yeses, you have to be present. You have to apply for the things. You have to go to the things. You have to meet the people. You're
not going to get turned down for something you don't apply for.
Well, exactly, so, yeah. Exactly. What's the worst that's going to happen? They're going to say no. Oh, cool. All right, apply for the next thing then. Mm-hmm. It takes a lot. I mean, I'm a lot better with rejection now than I was, but that's because I've been getting rejected for like 13 years, so I think I've softened it a bit now. You know, I've done some really, really cool stuff, but even day to day, like, you know, I have clients and we get rejected for stuff all the time. Yes, they get amazing bookings, but they'll get turned down for like 3 bookings before they book one, and that's just the nature of the industry. But
do you ever get like people come back and be like, this not this role, but actually I'm working on something else that they would be great for?
Yeah. And that is the glimmer of hope that this industry is built on. It's the next time, next time we got this. Yeah. No, but seriously, like it's really a nice moment when you do have that, because you think actually this casting director's come, taking a minute out of their day to acknowledge the talent and just say that they've got their eyes on the talent for the next thing. Yeah. And that's the motivation then to keep going. But yeah, you have to do the thing and you have to show up, and that's it. And just practice it, because, you know, this isn't me saying go to all really scary networking events, but just, you know, meet some other filmmakers, shoot some stuff, meet some other actors, do some improv, and just get yourself immersed in it, because then once you're immersed in what you want to be doing, it'll make you more hungry for it. Mm-hmm. Because you'll be doing it all the time, be like, okay, how can I elevate this? How can I be doing this? But, you know, I've been doing Amdram, great, now I want to get paid, and I want to get an agent, and I want to upgrade my show reel, or I want to go and do a tour. Because without goals, how are you supposed to have a plan?
Yeah.
Oh, it's a lot, isn't it? It's a very scary world.
That's very good advice, though. Yeah, have a goal.
Yeah.
Have something to work towards. And if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen.
Yeah, it could change. It could be fluid. I mean, I was convinced when I was 13 I'd be a child star. That didn't happen. But, you know, my path was different, and I wouldn't change it at all. And like now I finally feel that, you know, working on all these jobs and doing the access coordinating and being a talent agent, I feel like I've now found the things that I really want to be doing them. But I'm doing them because I was resilient, and I took the no's, and I moved around the industry a little bit, and I kind of put the feelers out, and I got a bit of practice. I mean, I've still got a lot of work to do, don't get me wrong, but I'm at a place now where I'm like, okay, this is what I want to build, and this is what I want to be doing, and I've got a really clear focus on that.
That's great. I'm going to start to wrap up. Is there anything before I do, though, that I haven't asked you that you wanted to say today? Or
so something that I would like to kind of share, and this is more for filmmakers, actors, anyone who's kind of, you know, wanting to get into entertainment, or perhaps is but needs that extra like motivational push, or, you know, something to look forward to, something exciting. I'm going to share this with you. I don't believe in gatekeeping. I think it's boring. So Cannes Film Festival do a 3-day film lovers pass. If you're over 18 and under 27, you can apply to go to Cannes when the festival's on. You get 3 days to go for absolutely free. Obviously, you have to pay for your flights and accommodation, but the pass itself is absolutely free. And you can go to Cannes while the festival's on. Now, some people like to go to like see how many celebs they can spot, or how many films they can watch, or how many martinis they can drink by the beach, or whatever. But it is such a wonderful, amazing experience. I mean, it's like the biggest film festival in the world. So I just kind of wanted to share that, because people don't know it exists. And last year was my first year in Cannes, and I did that pass, and it was amazing. And then this year I went back as a professional. Dazey Hills got accepted as like a professional agency to go. And that's me now. Every May, my goals are to be going to Cannes every year. And I think as something like exciting and motivational that is going to put you amongst thousands, it's bizarre. Like the whole town of Cannes is just taken over by like directors, filmmakers, writers, actors, models, fashion designers. Like it's a totally different world, but it's such an amazing world to be immersed in. And I think a lot of opportunities in this industry are quite hidden and buried. So there's a nugget. Apply for Cannes. You will have an amazing time.
That is a really good piece of advice, because I didn't know that, and I'm now very annoyed that I'm quite a bit over 27 and can't apply, and I've missed my chance.
Oh, apply anywhere. Like you never know, especially if you are a business owner. or an actor. I mean, I've only applied from the agency side, so I don't know what the kind of requirements are for actors and things, but it's worth looking into.
Yeah.
I mean, Cannes amazing.
I know they do like the short film corner, don't they? Which I've known a few people go to that.
Yeah. Oh, there's nothing like it. And the same goes for Berlin Film Festival. There's often initiatives. Venice, you know, all of these different places. So, you know, as much as I said earlier, think about what's local to you. Also think about the places you can go. Go chuck yourself into Cannes, or go meet some amazing people. You never know who you're going to see. And it's just such a wonderful time, such a special and inspiring place to be. So yeah, that's a little secret there.
Well, as a good place to end, I think.
Absolutely. Oh, this has been so much fun. Thank you, Rachel.
Yeah, it has been. I'm glad we were finally able to do it, and it's so interesting for me to hear your side of it, because talent agents are just this sort of like not mysterious, but this sort of slightly enigmatic thing that, you know, as a director or producer would not necessarily thought about how, like, your sort of your role and what it is you do. So it's good to hear that.
This is the thing that I'm kind of trying to. Well, one of the reasons why I even started my agency is because I didn't want, like, the concept of having an agent to seem so far away and so alien to some people. I wanted to kind of, like, you know, bring it back, whether that was like bring it back to Hampshire and be like, okay, there's an agent here, she's a real person, you know, she's young but she's had a lot of experience. Like, I really wanted to just kind of bridge the gap and be like, you know, don't be scared, because a lot of people think that an actor works for an agent or an agent works for an actor, and that is, in my opinion, absolutely incorrect. Like, you're working together, you're riding a bike, one of you is one wheel, one of you is the other. If one wheel's off, the bike's broken, it's not going to work. So that's something that I always say to people as well who are, like, nervous about applying to an agent, or, you know, I think there's a sort of status thing that gets into people's heads, which in my opinion is absolutely incorrect. Like, and I really want to kind of make that clear that for me as an agent anyway, it's very much a level playing field. And even if you're an actor who's, like, not immediately looking for representation, but you just want a bit of advice on what you're doing, or kind of want to know where you're at, I'm absolutely open to having those conversations, because, you know, this industry's hard enough without getting a bit of advice. Yeah. And it shouldn't be so hard to get advice. So I'm trying to change that.
Yeah, good. Where can people find you on the internet?
Oh, I'm everywhere. Instagram under It's Abbie Hills, or the Dazey Hills Co. Dazey is spelled Dazey rather than like the flower. I have a website, abbiehills.uk. Dazey Hills has a website. I'm on Twitter, but I'm not very good at Twitter. So yeah, Instagram, my website is probably the best. And then yeah, we can have a chat. My email is, like, everywhere. You'll find it. Or you can DM me on Insta. I'm open to the chat, always open to the chat.
Okay, I think that will do for today. So yeah, thank you for coming down. Hopefully in the future you come back and talk about your feature film.
Oh, absolutely. I definitely will. Thank you so much, Rachel.
No problem.
Well, that's almost a wrap for another episode of the podcast. Thank you so much for listening, and a huge thank you to my guest Abbie Hills for taking the time to come and talk to me and record this episode. Make sure you're following Abbie Hills and the Dazey Hills Company on social media, and go to Abbie's websites so you can stay in touch with what they're up to. As I said at the start, please follow and subscribe to this podcast so that you'll get a notification when the new episodes come out, especially for the time being, as we don't have a regular release schedule, but we will do soon, I promise. Please also leave a comment or a like or a review if you've got the option to do that, depending on where you're listening to this podcast, and let us know if there's a particular job or a particular person you'd like to hear from on this podcast. Let me know so I can try and make that happen for you guys. This podcast is produced by Blue Moggy Media. If you'd like to find out more about Blue Moggy Media and what we're up to, then you can follow us on Blue Moggy Media on Instagram, Twitter and Facebook, or go to bluemoggymedia.com. But for now, there's nothing left to say except make sure you come back for the chat with Alice Scott Hawkins, which will be the next episode. See you then.